We're going to fire this baby up. Come on, Chef. Let's hop right in here.
Okay.
Welcome to the Eat Y'all podcast, where we discuss the struggles and successes of the farmers, food producers, and chefs who are working to get better ingredients into restaurants today and to ensure their availability in the future.
This episode of the Eat Y'all podcast is made possible by the Southern Peanut Growers. Learn more about how peanut butter is made at peanutbutterlovers.com. That's peanutbutterlovers.com. Welcome to the Eat Y'all podcast, Peanut Edition. I hope you're ready for this one. This is the first of two episodes where we go nuts with underground nuts. Yes, that's right. Peanuts. We're going to be over in South Georgia, a couple hours south of Atlanta, about 4 hours, maybe 4.5 north of Panama City, Florida, for two episodes hosted with Chef Mike Marshall. Mike's got a really neat story. He's got a place called Myles Craft Catering over there outside of Atlanta. He's going to talk about some things that I think you'll be very interested in, but one of which we learned is that Mike hadn't been to a lot of farms. And so you'll hear a little bit about that, and you'll hear kind of the progression of his journey in culinary in this episode. So stick around. One of the neat things about what we do is seeing ingredients that just get kind of fleshed out a little deeper. And I always think about Forrest Gump. Y'all stick with me here. So in the Forrest Gump movie, Bubba starts talking about shrimp, and he starts just listing, and they really made it just go on and on, but it was shrimp scampi, shrimp creole, shrimp gumbo, shrimp etouffee, coconut shrimp, it just went on and on and on. Peanuts are an ingredient that there are literally hundreds of uses for them. They have been really, really utilized to promote sustainability with other crops. You've got peanut oil, you've got peanut butter, you've got all the different things you can do with it. And I think you're going to get some good information and good kind of resources from hearing about the peanut process, because it's really neat. We're going to get knee deep in that. So let's jump in with the first of two peanut episodes right now on the Eat Y'all podcast. I am in Perry, Georgia, which I don't even know where this is. I'm here. How far was this from Atlanta, Mike?
This is about an hour and 45-minute drive.
Hour and 45 minutes south of the south side of Atlanta. And I'm here with my guest, Chef Mike Marshall. And Mike, this is your first Eat Y'all anything, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
We're really glad to have you. Welcome to the Eat Y'all community. Really fun to get to catch up. I know you were sous chefing for a good friend of ours.
Yes.
Simon Brown, John Foles, Rick Tremonto back in the day.
Yes, sir. At Seafood Revolution.
Now you have a place called 7 Myles Craft Dining.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
7 Myles Craft Dining came from my father, who recently passed about 6 years ago. He was born on the 7th month and the 17th day, and his full name was Millard, but everybody called him Myles. So when I was trying to come up with a business name, I wanted to pay some homage to him, and just came up with 7 Myles Craft Dining.
I like it.
Thank you.
So let's go all the way back for you. Where do you originate from?
I was born in Jackson, Mississippi, and then by 1989, I moved to California, spent 25 years there.
How old are you, Mike?
41.
41. Okay. So 25 years in California.
Good.
So tell me about what was happening in California.
While in California, I attended Cordon Bleu School of Culinary Arts in Pasadena, and just started working around the Palm Springs area, different casinos and hotels. After my stint there in about 2014, I moved back to Mississippi. And that's when I started working for John Foster and Rick Tremonto at Seafood Revolution.
So did you find them, or did they find you, or how did that work?
I found them.
That's pretty neat. So you California culinary trained, and
Yes.
then you come back to your hometown.
Yes, I had to get some Southern roots.
That's awesome. Where'd you go between there and 7 Myles Craft Dining?
I went to the Westin Airport Hotel in Atlanta in about 2018. Worked for that company for about 2 years. and then got a job as executive chef for the Sheraton Galleria in Cumberland. And then, of course, as we all know, the pandemic hit. I was executive chef for about a week and a half before they furloughed me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then you had to figure out what to do with the lemons, right?
Correct. And during that whole time of early post-COVID last year, I worked some various jobs. I worked at Kroger, I worked for Amazon, and I worked for a shipping company just to keep some money in my pocket.
Yeah.
But I had to decide, what do I really want to do? What's going to make me happy in my career with this passion that I have? Do I really want to go back to work for someone else? So let me just step out on a limb and create 7 Myles Craft Dining. Let's take the restaurant to the people in their home so they don't have to worry about going out and getting interference or worried about wearing a mask, and let them feel comfortable in their own home with a 3-course dinner.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
So you're able to take the culinary skill you have and twist it and do something really unique and special in a home.
Yes.
Doing caterings and that sort of thing, too.
Oh, yes. Because basically what I do is I pack up my whole kitchen in 3 crates and a cooler. And I come to your home, I set up, I cook for you, I serve you, I clean up, and I leave. So I'm the front of the house manager, I'm the chef, I'm the server, and I'm the dishwasher all in one.
Pretty good package.
Yeah.
Now, you recently got married, didn't you?
I did. I got married in 2019.
Does your wife work with you in this, or are you?
She is my PR person. She has her own other career. She's a licensed LMFT psychotherapist, but she also handles my PR and my advertising for me.
That's awesome.
Yes.
So if you have interpersonal issues at work, you can talk to her about it too, right?
Oh, of course. I sit right there on the couch.
Prop your feet up and say, all right, honey. And she says, tell me more about that. Does she ever say, tell me how that makes you feel?
A lot. A lot.
I love it. So talk about your cooking style. Like, how would you describe, obviously, the West Coast influence and the Jackson, Mississippi roots? And
right.
How does all that look on a plate?
Well, it's all intermingled. It's all meshed together, because what I do is I should say, I'm a simple chef, but I want to be Michelin star worthy. I want to give you a bold impact on your palate without putting all these different 50,000 ingredients and garnishes on the plate. So what I do is I take a lot of old dishes and I revamp them, break them down, and put them back together in a new modern way, just to throw people for a loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun loop to get into.
Yeah.
So what's an example of one of those that's been really popular?
One that's been really popular is basically salmon, pesto, and mashed potatoes. I take a piece of salmon and I crust it with basil pesto and serve it with a smoked cheddar cheese mashed potato. Something very, very simple. Okay. But what new is I'm also doing what's called a stout demi. So I'll take a chocolate coffee stout and reduce that with beef stock and make a totally different sauce that you would never imagine that had beer in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds really, really amazing. What would you say has been kind of the highlight for you personally in the last month or so, as far as everything that you've done? What's really lit you up, got you the most excited?
Changing people's minds about food. I've had people that tell me, says, hey, Mike, you've come and cooked me. Your food is delicious. I don't like soup, but this soup is good and I want to have it again. I don't like caviar, but how you introduce this caviar is good. So the highlight is me being able to satisfy people, make them happy, and changing their minds about food. What
would you say most kind of inspired you or kind of set you on the path for culinary? Because, that's a crazy path to get down.
Yeah, it is.
Where did you make a wrong turn?
Oh, as a kid, do you remember Yan Can Cook and Great Chefs of the World?
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Every Saturday morning, I was up watching both of those shows. But before that, I was in the kitchen cooking for myself and my 2 younger brothers. I was making them breakfast. I was making them eggs. And it was just always a passion for me at that age. And I was always getting my hand slapped because I was reaching in the pot when I wasn't supposed to in the kitchen. So after those shows, I would go in the kitchen and hold my own little cooking show to myself. And it just stuck. Later on down the line, I found myself trying to take Hamburger Helper and put a better flavor to that. Just anything I could get my hands on, make it taste better.
Which was that hard?
Yeah, it was pretty hard with Hamburger Helper. Yeah, I did it. I made it taste better, but it was pretty hard.
So what'd you do to Hamburger Helper?
The beef stroganoff, instead of just using their recipe of milk, I actually use cream and some real beef broth. And I added maybe a little bit of tomato paste in there just to make so it doesn't taste so out of the box.
Boxy. Yeah.
Yes.
We get HelloFresh at the house sometimes. And almost every time I do it, and I'm the one who ends up cooking 90% of them, which I love. And, I love doing that, but I never do it exactly the way their recipe is because I'm like, oh, will they put 1 clove of garlic in here? Let me put 4 more.
Right.
Or, you just kind of try to soup it up a little bit, add a little something to it.
Exactly.
So it sounds like that's kind of, your MO as well. What has changed for you as you look at food and ingredients and, the whole culinary scene since you started? Well, how old were you when you started Cordon Bleu?
I got in the game late. I was 23 when I started culinary school.
I love that that's late.
Yes.
We interviewed a chef a couple weeks ago that started when he was 15. He's now 40 and he owns 3 restaurants, but he's never done anything else. So it is kind of funny. Like he's 6-7 years ahead of you there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, what's changed about food is to this day is sustainability. That is a big key issue for fresh quality food. A lot of these restaurants are using products that are just not of good sustainability, such as the fish and vegetables. And now a lot of restaurants are growing their own vegetables on the restaurant property and going straight from the garden to the kitchen, which you can't get any fresher than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say sustainable, what else do you think of in that? Like, maybe just explain that word and how you're using it for our listeners.
So sustainability is the process of pretty much using that product when it's not being overused and it can be reproduced. I'll give you an example of tuna. Everybody loves tuna around the world. Okay. Right. And it's pretty much overfished. So now to sustain the quality and the productivity of the tuna, they're taking the eggs and they're breeding them on the farm and then releasing the egg back into the ocean. So we're consistently having fresh new tuna and it's not being overfished. Okay. For the vegetables, we're starting to grow our vegetables from organic material using all of the vegetable as in compost, never wasting anything.
Yeah. I love the fishing example because that is something that, we've seen in the catfish industry and things like that, where you can produce a consistent product day in, day out. Mm-hmm. You never run out as long as you have a little bit of a lead time.
Right.
There's always another pond ready to go. Well, speaking of farming, talk to me about your first kind of on the farm gardening plant material memory. Like what do you think of when you think of like, okay, my first farm memory?
Well, that's pretty funny because earlier in the conversation today, we were talking about chickens, and my first real experience on the farm was this year. I got to process from live to table 11 chickens. And that's the first time I've ever done that, to where I put them in a cone, dispatched them, put them in a tumbler and cleaned them and stored them until they were ready to be cooked.
Wow. And
at the same time, the guy that I was helping process these chickens, he's running a farm in his backyard. Okay. 2 pigs. He's got squash and watermelons and all kinds of flowers growing everywhere. So he's teaching me about bulging at a certain time of the year where lettuce is just not good to pick. So It starts producing its flowers and its seeds. Yeah. That's my experience with farming so far.
So tomorrow, by this time, you will have been immersed in a peanut farm. Hopefully you brought some boots because I hear it's wet.
I did.
We will be cruising around a peanut farm, learning about their processes. And it actually, I've been on a couple myself, but I'm not the most well versed on peanuts. But I was curious what your experience so far has been with peanuts. Have you used them on any menus that you can remember?
No, not too many.
You've probably seen the pastry chef pull some out and do some things.
Right. I haven't used peanuts too much in my cooking, but whether it's making an Asian dish or just peanut crusted fish, that's about it.
You've probably cooked some things in peanut oil.
Oh, yes. Fried chicken is the best in peanut oil.
I'm not going to argue with you on that at all. Do you know what a peanut plant looks like?
I believe it's a small bush and doesn't get too tall, and peanuts just hang low. That's about all I know.
That's kind of correct.
Yeah.
They hang all the way low under the ground.
Right.
So they're a legume. Is that correct?
They're a legume. Yeah.
One of the things that I was really interested in seeing is how it gets from the ground, which is covered in dirt, into peanut butter. And you don't get any dirt in the peanut butter. Like, how does that process work? And I think we'll get a little bit more into that tomorrow.
Right.
Do you have any favorite peanut? Do you eat boiled peanuts?
I do eat boiled peanuts.
Do you have a recipe that you use to make them, or do you just throw some crab boil in there? Or
never actually made boiled peanuts before.
That's why you're here, because we're going to give you you're going to get your doctorate in peanut everything before you leave.
I'm excited.
So I hear we may be up to some boiled peanuts tomorrow and see how that happens. What do you remember your first time eating peanuts?
I can't remember. No.
I think for me, it was probably at a baseball game. It was probably at a Mississippi State game because they had the sacks of boiled peanuts and the sacks of dried peanuts. And it was like, do you want them wet or dry? You know what?
Now that you say that, I remember the first time I had boiled peanuts was the actual first time I tried peanuts ever.
Really?
My grandmother brought boiled peanuts when they used to do them on the side of the road in Jackson.
Yeah.
And she bought them right there for the vendor on the street, took me home and say, here, just go ahead and peel it open and eat it. And from that point on, I fell in love with boiled peanuts.
Yeah. What's funny about and Donald that we'll meet tomorrow, he and I were talking, kind of getting ready for this. And it was funny talking about, the boiled peanuts on the side of the road thing. There are some things that are a little more sketchy to order off the side of the road, but something that's been in a pot boiling for hours and hours and hours, probably pretty safe.
Yeah.
Like they killed it. It's not, there's nothing going on there. Whereas, if somebody's handing you a chicken off the back of their truck, maybe a little.
No.
Anyhow, that was something that I thought of, like, because there's a lot of roadside foods and things that are really awesome. And there's some that I'm a little more, cautious about. And I thought, boiled peanuts is one of those things you can always find somebody down on the coast of Mississippi, up and down 49. And
it's a southern thing. You don't see boiled peanuts in California.
Oh, I believe that.
You don't see boiled peanuts being sold in the gas station in a crock pot in California. You don't see fried chicken or chicken on a stick being sold at the gas station.
What?
No.
What do they sell? Tacos,
the little and taquitos and hot dogs on the spindles,
right?
In gas stations. So not even barbecue at the gas stations in California.
They don't know what they're doing.
No. So
do you have peanuts? One of the main uses is peanut butter and jelly, or peanut butter, which then it's obviously a really sustainably grown, cost-efficient, cost-effective protein.
Right.
Have you had a few PB&Js?
Oh, yeah. You've ever had a grilled PB&J?
Yes, I have.
Grilled PB&Js are very good.
It's been a while since I think we did them for an event one time. And I don't know that I've done them in a while.
Oh man. I've even done a peanut butter and jelly cheesecake.
No, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
That sounds really good. Well, the peanut, we're going to dig deeper into the peanut world more tomorrow with you, Mike. But I wanted to dig a little further in your culinary journey. And as you see the industry, you've obviously worked for some folks who've been in the kind of the James Beard category. You've worked in big corporates. You've worked in I mean, working with John Foster, Rick Tremano, and
Yes.
obviously Simon Brown. Simon, I know you're listening. I know that's almost as impressive as working with those guys. But when you think about kind of the path you've been on and what you've seen in the culinary world, what do you think is sort of a challenge that's going to be, out there for the industry as you've seen it, that, over the next 5-10 years, that the industry's like, what's coming up that people need to be aware of or need to be thinking about?
Quite honestly, I don't see any challenges as far as the food, because the food is reverting back to the old ways of what it used to be. Because, early 2000s, people like using the microgreens and things like that. Now we're just going back to simple plating and simple garnishes to making things simple. All the microgastronomy is coming out of the trend, and you're just going back to basic simple cooking.
Yeah. I think I'm seeing that too. And also with, obviously you being the front of house and back of house, your labor challenges are different than probably they were at the Westin or Sheraton. But I know right now every chef I've talked to in the last 18 months has said something about being overworked and also not having enough help to overwork them.
Right.
What do you see that as something that probably continues a little bit, or do you think it's?
Yes. Right now it's out there. It's hard to find work. Even the simple restaurants as Taco Bell and Burger King, we can't get people to come and work for a top dollar price, and we can't figure out why. That's one of the problems that is going on in the restaurant industry right now, because the hours are there, the pay is there.
Yeah.
But it's just, we can't find the employees to come work.
Well, I've seen that, and I hope things will turn a corner soon. But that's obviously one of those challenges that a lot of chefs are trying to cope with and figure out, hey, what's the next thing we can do to be more. And part of what, kind of what you were describing is if you can make what you're making really good, but a couple of steps simpler, then you can cut a little bit of labor that you would have had to hire for.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I think that kind of ties into that. So Mike, you're 41 years old?
Yes, sir.
So we're about the same age.
Yeah.
When you think back on, okay, you've named this business after kind of your father and what he meant to you, what legacy do you want to leave behind? Like, do you have kids?
I have 4 children.
4 kids?
Yes.
So you're thinking about what you're leaving behind.
Oh, yes. Yes. I want to leave a legacy of making an impact on food. I am not the kind of chef that, what's the word I'm looking for? An innovative chef. I'm sorry. I don't come up with new ways of making food, but I just want to be that guy to say, hey, Chef Michael's food is impactful. Chef Michael's food is memorable and flavorful. His presentation, I'll always think about when I walk through the doors of 7 Myles Craft Dining, which I hope to be opening up pretty soon.
So you got a brick and mortar kind of?
Yep. Brick and mortar in the plans.
That's awesome. Do you have a specific thing that you wish people knew more about? Like if there was one thing that I wish people knew or understood this or a specific thing about culinary, about your work that you're doing?
I wish people knew and understood the operations of the business. When you come in and you sit down at the restaurant, or when I come to you, when you contact me to do a service for you, a dinner, because I charge $150 per person. And to be, that's a lot of money. But no, you have to understand that I'm 3 or 4 people in one, and I'm traveling to you.
You're a Swiss Army knife.
Right. So you have to pay for that. And then if you go to the restaurant, it'll be the same exact thing, because you're going to walk away spending about $150 to $200 ticket at a table. So $300 for 2 people is not a lot to ask. But understanding the business and operations of the kitchen, I wish people could understand more, because there's a lot that goes on than you just see us cooking. Yeah,
for sure.
Right.
Yeah. All the, when people look at something, hit the skillet or, the saute pan or whatever, and then 5 minutes later it's on their table.
Right.
They don't realize that something was prepped and braised and stored and cleaned and washed and cut and, all of the prep that goes into it. And then all of the pots and pans and all of the stuff after that. Mm-hmm. So I do know that a lot of folks recently have been trying to be, I've seen a lot of people on Facebook saying, hey, look, if you're going out to eat, just be patient because everybody's doing all they can. And it's gotten to where folks want to, instead of putting help wanted signs, if you are not looking for help, you put up a sign because everybody is.
Right.
Every 18-wheeler on the way here, it was like, we're hiring.
Right.
Everybody's looking for good people. So, yeah, I think that really translates from the culinary industry to a lot of places. What would you say you're most proud of in what you do?
I'm most proud of actually having the courage to step out on the limb to create this business. Because my psychologist / wife has always told me if it wasn't for the pandemic, you would still be at the Sheraton. Making good money, of course, but working for somebody else, not your operation, not doing what you wanted to do. But with you stepping out on the limb and creating 7 Myles Craft Dining, now you're successful. Now you can be proud of what you do. When people tell me that after I've served them, it's only proof in the pudding, man.
How does it feel to have your name and logo on your chef jacket and on your website and to know?
Pretty good. May my father rest in peace. I wish he could be here to see it, because I know he would even be proud of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got 4 kids. Any hope that they may end up working with you for you at some point, or they?
I can use a hostess too. Yeah. I got 2 daughters, so they can be hostess.
So you're training them up? Do they have any knife skills, Mike?
No, they don't have any knife skills.
What do you do to unwind after a crazy week? That's legal that you could tell us about.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I do CrossFit, and I actually started just picking up golf.
Oh, really?
Those 2 things, yeah.
There you go. We should have scheduled better. We could have gotten no rain, and we could have played golf.
Right.
After all this.
Right.
Well, we could go to the gym, but Yeah, I was describing. I was trying to tell Leslie. I was like, Mike, and I was like, I mean, the guy's built like Ezekiel Elliott. He's always got his guns out.
Oh, no, not quite, man.
Oh, man. Well, look, we're really excited about getting out on a farm with you tomorrow. Yes, I know we're going to continue this, but I kind of wanted to have a little appetizer, a little muse to kind of get things rolling and kind of learn more about where you're coming from. Excited to get you out on a farm and see what you can learn from that, and we'll eat some more peanuts tomorrow.
Oh, man, I'm interested. I'm excited.
I want to take a quick break from today's interview to thank the family farmers in Georgia, Mississippi, and Florida who proudly grow the peanuts for your favorite jar of peanut butter. Now, peanut butter is such a versatile ingredient that chefs love, and we hope after today's episode you're inspired to love it even more. For more information about peanut butter, including culinary ideas, the history of peanut butter, and more, you can go to the Southern Peanut Growers website. That is at peanutbutterlovers.com. That's peanutbutterlovers.com. Loads of information on there. Check it out.
So there are no sole peanut farmers.
Okay.
In this part, there are a few in Florida who grow peanuts year after year.
Mm-hmm.
Our soils don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
Peanuts are just an amazing plant. Mm-hmm. They produce their own fertilizer. Mm-hmm. So when I go plant, and you see, if it hadn't been raining for 2 weeks solid, we could have seen some of this in action. But
right.
And we're going to go to the field, but it's wet. Okay. But you see all that peanut hay?
Right.
That acts as fertilizer for the corn in the following year. Oh. And it's wonderful stuff. So this combine is my mom's.
Okay.
She'll turn 80 this year.
Okay.
And the other one, that's my dad. So we dig the peanuts up and turn them up and let them sit like this.
Okay.
And then when we go over the fields, we're picking them up, put them in these wagons. These wagons are dryer wagons.
Okay.
We're going to go see all this stuff, but I had this picture. So these are dryer wagons, and Michelle and I actually load them onto these semi-trucks where they go to storage.
Okay.
And they're stored in shell because God gave them that perfect storage place. And they don't, but once they get shelled, they got a timer on them as far as rancidity.
Right.
So, but they can, given that we have to dry them to a 10.49% moisture for them to stay at that.
So what's the season for peanuts?
We plant typically in around the 1st of May.
Okay.
Some people, if they have a lot more acres, plant a little earlier than that. This year I planted like the 28th of April.
Okay.
And it just turned out that way. And I should be harvesting today.
Right.
But it's going to be a few days before we can get in any fields. It's wet.
So
it's
anywhere
wet.
from between April and September is peanut season.
Yes, it's usually about 140-day crop.
Okay.
And we here in the Southeast, as a general rule, we have good, that good long growing season, and it really affects the flavor. If a peanut doesn't get the good growing degree day units, you won't have the good peanutty flavor.
Okay.
So years ago, they would put a plow, that mule had a plow. He would plow that up. They would by hand stack them on these poles with the roots facing out, and they would cure there. Then they would bring this thresher in and thresh them there, which takes the peanut off the vine. But it was a stationary thing. As we move through time, and this is really weird because it's happened mostly in my lifetime, they said, hey, let's put peanuts in rows, let's build a digger. And they started doing this, the 60s.
Does the U.S. produce a majority of the peanuts?
No. China and India are the largest producers.
Okay.
Most of that is used in country.
Okay.
The Indians export a little bit. The Chinese export a little bit. The Chinese use it predominantly for peanut oil.
Okay.
So an edible peanut is not really it's kind of a novel thing. And really, when peanuts started growing in this country, they grew it for hog feed.
Really?
Yeah. But there was a very smart man. Do you know who this smart man was?
Name's on the tip of my tongue.
Yes, George Washington Carver.
Yep.
He and this guy had to be 200 years ahead of his time. Right. I mean, really. He said, you know what? We're exhausting our land with growing cotton year after year after year after year. Yeah. That's the reason he said you need to put peanuts into your rotation because they're a legume. They help to put nitrogen in the soil. The diseases, the insects, the pests that were a problem with cotton, it just gives it a break. Mm-hmm. And he said, but in order for that to happen, we have to find uses for it. Mm-hmm. Well, peanut butter had already been invented in Michigan. That was some of the Kellogg people in Michigan. But Dr. Carver said, there's a number of uses. We want to grow an edible nut.
Right.
And that really kind of transformed things. And then the government back in the 30s said, we want to encourage farmers to grow this. And, here we are today. It's $1 billion industry in Georgia. Mm-hmm. Georgia grows about 50% of that grown in the U.S.
Wow.
And, and you traveled around the world. Mm-hmm. It's hard to find peanut butter in a lot of places, right?
Right.
We eat peanut butter, what is it, like 7 pounds a year? Mm-hmm. Except me, I use probably 50 pounds of peanut butter a year, but that's just because I love it.
Now, is there a variety or different kind of peanuts that are out there?
There are 4 market types of peanuts. There are a Spanish, which is a shorter season peanut, very small. I'm sure there are some grown, but I just don't hear much about it anymore. Mm-hmm. Then the runners is probably the next largest size. The runner peanut is what's grown all over the South. They're grown everywhere. That's peanut butter.
Okay.
So probably 80% of the peanuts in the Southeast are grown as peanut butter, and some are grown for candy makers. There's the Valencia type, which has the four kernels per pod, yeah.
Okay.
And 3 or 4, and they grow most of those in New Mexico. There are also a lot of those are grown as organic. New Mexico, they don't have 2 weeks worth of tropical weather to create diseases. And, our biggest problem we have with organic here in Georgia is that the weeds are going to come up. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I hope we can get that point where we can grow a good organic peanut. The peanut itself, I think, could do it just fine. We have diseases. I mean, we use fungicides because it's, wet. Not much in the way of insecticides, but then the runner type is that. Mm-hmm. Valencia type. Then the Virginia type is what you eat at the ball game.
Okay.
Predominantly grown in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia.
Okay.
We can grow them here. All have some of the same characteristics.
Right. Because in my mind, I never would have differentiated a different type of peanut. I just know a peanut as a peanut.
Mm-hmm. But you notice all the different apples, right? Because you're like, okay, that's a Fuji, that's a Granny Smith, that's a fill in the blank.
Right.
I've had people ask me, why don't you market a specific type of runner? So in the runner market, we have maybe like 17 different varieties. Mm-hmm. The predominant one is called a Georgia 06G. It was released in 2006. I've started growing a high oleic peanut this year. High oleic has obviously a little higher concentration of oleic acid, so you get a little better shelf life. That's the driver. That's the economic driver why the candy companies only want high oleics.
Okay.
And they're growing a lot of them in Texas. And this is completely subjective opinion, which is based by some fact, but our peanuts have a much better flavor than they do grown out in the high plains of Texas. Mm. We have heat, humidity. I think it has to do with oil content.
Just like wine, you have the terroir.
Yes, right. That's right. It's just, but, there's a place for those. But the peanut butter manufacturers really like the southeastern peanut. The peanut butter manufacturers don't want high oleic. Mm. You get more of I think you get more of a flavor. Mm. It's all pretty subjective, Peanuts have such an incredible sustainability story. Number one, we don't require really fertilizer. And when we're talking about pollination, peanuts are self-pollinated. We don't require bees to do it. We have some issues. I wouldn't call them issues because we've been on a steady trajectory reducing our pesticide usage in peanuts, and I think we're probably going to do a lot more in that. Peanuts are non-GMO.
Right.
Everything, all peanut varieties are, when they're bred, they take a peanuts flour. We'll see this when we go to the field, and they'll like cover that up the day before they start to pollinate it. Then they'll hand pollinate it to get to do the crosses to make new varieties. Right. So we've resisted genetic modification of peanuts because we've been able to make steady increases in yield without having to do that.
Right.
And I think that sets us apart. We do, I think, in fairness, our challenge may be aflatoxin, but the whole U.S. supply chain, we're testing for it all the time. And it's predominantly in peanuts in a really dry year and in a really dry field or something like that. So we're working on that.
Right.
I mean, but it is a real problem. And, because of our rotation and the fact that every year we don't have a tree to sustain.
Right.
That's a big deal.
So Donald, we're just leaving your house to go look at things. Tell us what part of Georgia we're in and the name of your operation here.
Well, we are in Macon County, Georgia, which folks in Atlanta think we're South Georgia, but folks in South Georgia call us Middle Georgia. So this is Chase Farms And I farm with my parents and my wife. My parents are both in their 80s, or very soon to be both in their 80s. This is where I grew up. We're going to go look at a field of peanuts. We grow peanuts, corn, sweet corn, and then we have a poultry farm. I've taken you to this end of the field because this is the dry end of the field. The other end is when I pulled up peanuts the other day out there, you could see how they're just covered in. I mean, the water was just dripping. I mean, literally dripping off of it. This field is a fairly new variety from the University of Florida called Tough Runner, and it looks promising. You know, as you can tell, the look of them now, they're mature. They're really mature. And I wanted to point out to you this bloom. So how that's supposed to work is and you can see, look here. When it blooms, it sends off a peg. Those pegs are looking to punch in, and there's the first little pod developing. So those pegs, all from those blooms, they punch down, and then I'm just going to go ahead and pull up a plant here.
Oh, wow.
So there is the plant, and the interesting thing, you see all those little things there?
Right.
Those are nitrogen nodules.
Nitrogen nodules.
Yes. So it's a legume, and it's producing its own fertilizer there. And what you'll see, just pretty much the case in all of them, the peanuts closest to that taproot are the most mature.
Mm-hmm.
And the farther you get out on these limbs, obviously, they're not near as mature. So you can see, like, that one, we'll look at the difference.
Now, are the peanut flowers edible?
Probably. I don't know of anybody. I've never done it. But, yeah, I wouldn't see why not. You see, that one is getting really close. When they get that dark color in the hull like that, that's a fully mature peanut. These peanuts should be harvested soon. And then this one was much farther out on the vine. You can see it's still pretty mature too. So, Mike, digging peanuts is the final exam. You've worked 9 months, and you're going to see, well, you know, did I do everything I could have done? Mm-hmm. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of it is just depending on the weather, and I like to think that a lot of it is just a blessing from God.
Right.
You can do everything within your power, and if the Lord doesn't bless you with some good weather, you're fighting an uphill battle. But we've had good weather thus far. Mm-hmm. These 2 weeks of rain have not been the best thing for us, but you know, that's just part of farming.
Right.
You have those challenges, but that looks like a pretty good crop. We grow seed peanuts.
Okay.
So they're 2 seeds.
Okay.
If you stuck that in the ground right now, in a couple of days, that sucker would be sprouted and a new plant growing.
Wow.
That's what we do, and we're a little different than a lot of what we call a commercial growers, because we take a little more care, so we don't want to damage the viability of that seed. If, for instance, well, we had this in 2018. It was like 98 degrees this time of year, and that peanut dries out too fast.
Right.
That this little seed coat here starts to get loose, and if that peanut breaks apart, it's no longer a viable seed. Okay, so we have to be really careful about that. Yeah, well, the germ is there, but it's not going to. It has to have both halves to develop. And you see that that's actually little peanut leaves inside there.
Oh wow!
Yeah, those are the leaflets of the new plant.
Wow.
So Yeah, you can tell. I'm pretty. This plant is just nothing short of amazing. We have 140 acres in this field. We used to be significantly larger, but I've got 140 acres and then another 70 acres, and that's all the peanuts I have this year. It just works that way in terms of rotation.
How many bushels, pounds? What do you measure the?
Well, we measure it on pounds per acre. The average yield in 2020 was like 4,200 pounds to the acre. We did a little better than that. We typically want 6,000 pounds to the acre.
Okay.
We feel like that if we don't, we would be disappointed if we made less than 6,000.
This is 140 acres?
140 acres.
That's a lot of peanuts.
Yeah, I hadn't figured out how many. 140 times 3 would be 520 tons. Mm-hmm. Times 2,000. Yeah. We used to have about 600 acres of peanuts, but we were farming 1,600 acres back then. We've leased a bunch of our land out. Okay. As my parents have gotten older, we just said, you know what, we're just gonna be smaller. Because I love to be hands-on. So if you see the tracks here,
yes, those
are where we have sprayed fungicides on these to try to keep if it stays damp down in this canopy, there's just going to be funguses growing in there. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't see much of it. And the other thing I do is I spray at night because at night these leaves all fold up just like this. And so if you're trying to get down and put a fungicide to control soil-borne diseases, you need to get that material down to the base of the plant. Okay. It's a lot. I mean, and the thing about it is, we all love growing peanuts. I mean, it's just it's different. I mean, I like, doing most everything, but there's something about peanuts. And I wish if you could be here and smell that smell of a freshly dug peanut field.
The earth turned over.
It's really something else.
Really?
It really is.
Wow.
And it will permeate the whole area here. But so peanuts, we plant what we call a 6-row pattern. So there's 1 bed, 2 beds, 3 beds. And you can sort of see the definition of the rows in there. Mm. And then our harvesting machines all dig that and then pick it. So every farm has what I would consider to be their package,
Mm-hmm. Well, and chefs, right, you buy a whole, like you were talking earlier, you buy a whole shark. Well, you can cut fillets off it, but then there's all the rest of the things. How do you fully use that? What do you do with all the outputs that are left over that are not part of the original thing that you wanted? Right. Well, you can throw it out and have to charge 3 times more for your fillets.
Right, yeah, Justin, that's right.
Or you can, use your byproducts for, we're going to make a dip, we're going to make a stock, and so that's what you're doing over here. Instead of paying somebody to haul your waste off, your waste is actually an input for another segment of your farm, right?
True.
And at the shelling plant, those shells are the same thing.
Actually, the guy who cleaned out for me just called me yesterday afternoon. He says, I can't find any peanut hulls. Because they use peanut hulls as a bedding base for poultry here in Georgia.
So instead of wood shavings.
Yeah. Now, I use shavings because I'm really concerned about, I'm trying to minimize that peanut contact. Hop into a combine down here.
Shakes them loose. It lays them back down on the ground.
With the roots and the peanuts on top.
Right. Okay. So you leave the peanuts there for 2 days. If it's
2 to 3 days.
2 to 3 days is super dry. Then the combine comes by and picks all of those peanuts up and separates them from the roots and leaves. Mm-hmm. Puts the roots and leaves back on the ground for fertilization.
Right. And then the peanuts themselves come off, and that's the unloading thing. We'll put it in the wagons just while we're here. That is my seed tender. So I buy seed in bulk, load it in there when I'm planting, and fill up my hoppers and everything. Mm-hmm. It's a little better than doing 50-pound bags.
How much seed do you have to plant 120 acres? What does that look like?
I think this year on this particular variety, we used around 160 pounds to the acre. About 140 is the average, but this variety had a little bigger seed size. Because you're planting on population, not on pounds, but just in terms of pounds. So 160 pounds on 140 acres, I think it was like almost 30,000 pounds or so.
Now that seed, are you getting it from the harvest that you get?
Well, no. Georgia and Alabama and Florida, they all have their crop improvement associations. So we plant foundation seed, which is a couple of steps just behind the breeder. The breeders, when they've come up with a variety, they may only have 10 pounds of seed, and it takes a couple of years to get that seed supply built up.
Okay.
So we're pretty far back in the process. So we plant seed, we produce registered seed. Somebody else plants the registered seed, and they produce commercial seed.
Okay.
And then the typical farmer plants that.
Okay.
We get a little extra for that. That's the reason we do it. But we are also really careful about preserving the identity.
Right.
So, Michael, these are dryers. They plug into the holes in the back of these trailers here, and blow hot air through there. Now, as I told you, we're as seed growers, we're a little bit more careful about getting that. So I have a system. I don't have it out here. I'm waiting to put it out here till after it dries up a little bit. But I got a fiber optic network and the controllers that monitor this. So the best way to keep that is to keep the temperature down. So the maximum I'll go to is 90 degrees, and then all night long it lowers it to 15 degrees above ambient temperature.
Okay.
And from a chef, why this is important to you, it really helps to keep the flavor right too. Mm-hmm. So if you cook them here, there's no way they're going to have a good flavor.
Right. So
it's important to, and there are a lot of buying points that utilize this or something similar.
The catch, though, is they have to be down to at least 10% moisture or less to store them because it's a once-a-year crop. Mm. So you don't want to – they got to be dry enough that you're not introducing moisture into the warehouses and stuff.
And you get bacteria, you get mold.
You get mold and aflatoxin and all sorts of bad things if you don't get that.
So is this a sensor right here on the front of this?
Yeah, that's the moisture sensor. Not the moisture. That's the temperature sensor. Anyway, that's the process. The semi comes here, and then they're gone.
Oh, wow.
So digging, picking, curing, loading, they're gone. And those wagons over there are considerably older than you, I'm sure. Yeah. But they're from 1967. Those are the wagons that I used to ride when we pulled them on track. Up here, back right through there used to be the buying point, and they closed. And I would ride there to school with my dad on a tractor and me on top of the peanut wagon.
Wow!
So you live really close to the Flint River in Fayetteville, right? Mm-hmm. That river supplies 50% of the peanuts grown in Georgia with water. Mm. Or when it gets down here, it's all in this underground aquifer, the Floridan aquifer. Okay. So that river replenishes the aquifer, unlike the Ogallala out in the Midwest. It replenishes every year. Mm-hmm. We've got 70 years worth of data. There have been a couple of years it's not replenished, but that water is super critical. Well, what do? Well, Florida sued us. That's it. We won, but I wouldn't take that as a victory. I take that as a wake-up call. We've got to do a better job of managing our water use efficiency. Mm-hmm. So we've got soil moisture meters that sit out there and tell me, hey, it's time to irrigate. And they got probes down in the ground. We're watching the whole moisture profile and managing that with rainfall. And that's one of the biggest things we're doing is trying to do that.
You've been listening to the Eat Y'all podcast, hosted by Eat Y'all founder and chief relationship officer, Andy Chapman. If you enjoyed this episode, It would mean the world to us if you'd join us in our mission to save family farms by subscribing and leaving a review. Even better, share this episode and follow us on your favorite social media account at Let's Eat, Y'all.